Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Pro Video Pages webinar and podcast series. I am here with Robin Bowl of Schooly Mitchell, and Robin and I just finished recording the webinar that she took and applied to smaller businesses. So, Robin, I want to say welcome. And you had some interesting things that I didn't mention. I just pulled up the information you sent me about introducing you, and I didn't mention this in the introduction in the webinar, and that you are a big Buffalo Bills fan because having hailed from Buffalo. Um, but now you are in Arizona and in really hot weather. So, um, and you do like spending time outside, except when it's like 110 degrees. And I don't know who likes to spend time outside, but you also like paddleboarding. So tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, I moved actually from the Midwest where I lived on a lake and could paddleboard every night. And I thought, okay, you're moving to the desert. You're going to have to give that up. And come to find out, there's actually more people paddleboarding here in Arizona than there was in Michigan. It's and partly because it's all transplants. So many people are from somewhere else, but it's in the summer. If you get up early enough, 5 a.m. or so, you can get to the Salt River and you can paddleboard while you're watching the sunrise behind the mountains. And wild horses will come from the edges and come and drink water right next to you as you're paddleboarding by. I mean, I've nothing like anything I've ever experienced. It's really, really beautiful.
Oh, that's so cool. On a separate note, I just watched a YouTube video about beavers. And did you know that beavers have been instrumental in rehabilitating different environments? And I think including, was it the Gila River in Arizona? Is that right?
That's
Yeah.
correct.
So,
Yeah, no,
yeah.
paddleboard. I love to be on the water. The only weird thing here is that the water levels can vary greatly depending on how much snow it was got, how much the mountains got snow. In
Yeah.
fact, one of my favorite lakes is like foot down from last year already. So that's kind of a bummer.
Yeah, and that's a little scary too, right? Depending upon how you look at it. So,
Yeah.
okay, so Robin, we've got some questions that we discussed and that I like to ask my guests. We are going to, for those of you listening, we are going to jump around a little bit. We're going to make this pretty tight in the interest of respecting your time and investment that you're making listening to this. So first, I want to know why you got involved with this. I know that you said in the bio that you didn't like necessarily, being in HR and the people that they reported to. So tell me about how you got involved with Schooly Mitchell and a little bit about what Schooly Mitchell is.
Yeah, thanks. I got involved with Schooly Mitchell when I was leaving corporate America, and I was looking for something. I wanted to do something on my own, something where I could put a little bit more of myself into the final product. And honestly, I looked at probably 12 or 15 different businesses, and I fell in love with Schooly over the business model. I had done some consulting when my son was a baby in order to stay home with him for a little while. And I always hated that minute when you asked for your retainer, but you really hadn't done anything yet. They didn't really know you. They didn't really know what you could do. I love the idea that at Schooly, we can show somebody exactly how we can help them, and there's no retainer or upfront costs because it seems almost illogical for a company that does expense reduction to go in and be another expense for a business. I mean, I don't know how I would even sell that, quite honestly. So I love the idea that we can go in and help a business, and literally they never take a dime out of their own pocket for it. So that's the primary thing I fell in love with. In terms of who we are, this is a mouthful, but we are North America's largest independent cost reduction firm. And the independent part is important because we're not a broker, we're not a reseller, we're not a group purchasing organization or GPO. We actually negotiate on behalf of each individual client separately based on their industry, their size, and who their current vendors are, and what they're currently paying. So a little bit different approach to cost reduction.
So in this way, you're actually focused on, you've got the best interests of the company in mind, and you are directly motivated by saving the money because obviously you get a percentage, and we don't need to go into that, but you get a percentage of the savings, right?
Correct. Absolutely. And I oftentimes will say to people, and I don't want to mischaracterize all brokers because there's some fantastic brokers out there. But going back to what I talked about earlier of understanding how people are paid. If I'm brokering 3 companies and I bring you a deal, and do you know that's the best deal for you, or is it the best deal where I get the highest commission? Where with us, we're splitting based on savings. And if I don't find any savings, a company doesn't owe me a dime. We've just come in and done a free market analysis for them, and they can feel good that their prices are in line. Now, does that happen very often? No, not really, but it could, hypothetically.
Right, right. Well, you know what? It's one of those things, we'll get into, I like to do marketing audits, which is very similar in helping people make better decisions, and think differently. And in the webinar, you do get, I believe that you are looking to change the way people look at their expenses. I think that it's really interesting that the typical way that these cost savings, or the not quite so great way, is similar to a real estate agent. They are the timing, if they wait a little longer and get a little bit more for the property, they're the one that's doing well. Whereas, their client needs to sell it soon, and the final amount is not as important as the closing by a certain date.
Yeah.
So the needs aren't aligned, right? Or their interests aren't aligned.
Yeah. And that can happen. In things like GPOs, certainly businesses can save money there as well. But in those situations, you're basically being added onto a contract that's already been negotiated for a large group of companies. So it may not address all of your individual business needs, where because we're doing it by each client, we can address any special needs that they might have.
I like that it's meeting clients where they are. And honestly, I think that, I see that with a lot of people that we know in common through the Connective, that, and I do it with my video clients. They done video before? Where are they? That's okay. I can meet them where they are. I'm not going to tell them, well, you're going to do these 5 things in this order. If they're not ready to do those things, then it's not going to work.
Absolutely. A lot of technology. I might say to someone, hey, here's what you have. Based on what you've told us you need, we suggest you get this bigger technology, or you combine technologies. So we do see that, but it is, to your point, it's all about meeting them where they are and with an eye to the future of what their business is going to look like.
So tell me about the PCI compliance and how easy that is, and a little bit about it and what it is.
That PCI compliance we run into, sometimes people don't realize as a merchant when they're taking credit cards that there are standards. PCI is the payment card industry data security standards. So there's a set of standards they've adopted to make sure that all the transactions are secure, that all your data is maintained in a safe and secure way. So that is a charge that sometimes will be on someone's monthly merchant services statements. And they may not know what it is. It may just say PCI compliance, $30, $40 a month. They can easily get rid of that charge by completing that PCI compliance form. So if they see that charge on their invoice, they should definitely go immediately to their vendor and find out how to get that form and get it filled out. They definitely do not have to be paying that monthly fee.
Great. Thank you. Okay, Robin, in the webinar, you talked about so many different ways that people can take the time to look at the bills and their expenses and look to save. And really, it struck me when you said that don't look to cut staff as the first way to cut your expenses. And that, I think, even if somebody doesn't have employees, that just makes so much sense. So cut the things that are not going to affect the operation of your business, so that you can scale and grow. But how much can somebody expect to save? And I know that this varies greatly, but I'd love to hear your thoughts on that, because I want to motivate people to actually take the time and make the effort to do this.
Yep, I agree. It's hard for me to state for smaller businesses. I can tell you for the clients that Schooley Mitchell works with, we save an average of 26 to 28%. That can vary a lot based on industry, size of organization, who their incumbent vendor is, and what they might be looking to enhance or change. regardless of that, I think it's a worthwhile effort. Even if the savings isn't great now, but if you have contracts that are coming up that are going to expire, knowing ahead of time that you want to save money, going into that with that mindset, I think it's a worthwhile thing to do every year, if not every 6 months, is to review all those expenses, make sure they're in line, make sure you understand what they are. So I think regardless of the percentage or dollar amount, it's just a good due diligence for your business to really understand those expenses better.
And how would you recommend somebody getting started with this? I think you in the webinar you mentioned just a spreadsheet. Is that how you would do it?
I would, yes, absolutely. And that's how I do it in my personal life. I take my monthly credit card bank statements, export them into Excel, and then sort through them and look to see where I've spent money, how much did I spend. Uh, I have my cell phone and other expenses on there. I'll do a quick glance and say, has that cell phone bill remained the same for the past 3 months or 6 months? You may see a billing error on there. All of a sudden, maybe it jumps up $30. You say, well, what happened? At least now you're alerted. You can go and dig in, go back online to your account and say, what happened there? And if it's a billing error, then you can immediately contact the vendor and see if you can get some type of refund. So I think just putting it into Excel so it's right in front of you, the dollar numbers, where you can quickly at a glance say, what looks weird here? Just one of these expenses, wow, 6 months ago, that was really high. What happened? But if it's not right in front of you as a business owner, we're all super busy. It's not right in front of our face. Sometimes we don't pay attention to.
Yeah, and it's got me thinking you set this up and then like you said, you check monthly or you check as long as you're doing it regularly, you're on the right track so that you're aware. And then, certain things like with the terms, the contracts, the number of seats of things and just I think we all owe it to ourselves. And the future health of our business to be on top of things this way. And it might seem daunting to set it up or just uncomfortable. It's like doing taxes, right? But once you start doing this, then you're the one who's in control and you can feel
Yes.
confident.
Yes. And putting things on your calendar. I started doing that. And again, in my personal life, I had an annual subscription auto renew on something, and they would often send back something that was going to be twice as much. And so I just started putting a little note in the calendar 30 days ahead of time saying, get ready for this. Are you going to renew it? Make sure you understand, don't let it go by. And that's the danger personally and professionally of auto renew, is that it renews at whatever the new price is. So if we don't stay on top of it, next thing we're 2 or 3 months into the next year and we realize, oh no, that contract renewed. Darn it. Now you can't get out of it. So it's as easy as just put something in your calendar. I would say 90 days before a contract ends. If you want to change vendors, if you already know you're unhappy with your vendor, I would say 120 to 150 days to give yourself time to find a new vendor before that contract expires.
Yeah, I do see having, start with the spreadsheet, get these expenses down, get the contract period down. And then we've got these subscriptions like Zoom you can be month to month. I just changed to an annual subscription for Zoom. And it's
Right.
like, no, that's one that, that I am using all the time. And so with those, I mean, I like to say, and I've talked to people about this before, is when you start a new subscription, go month to month. That way you can get out of it. And then when you are sure that you are going to, get the most of it, go to an annual subscription and then put it in the calendar so that you
Yes.
can look at it again and see. We didn't used to have to deal with a tech stack, having to manage a tech stack as a small business owner, but now that's a real thing, right?
Absolutely. I mean, those now, even for smaller businesses, that will integrate all of your telecom, all of your merchant services into a CRM that is client facing as well. I mean, that's a lot of tech interacting together and a lot of expenses interacting together.
Yeah, like even Zapier, trying to integrate with Zapier. I had a Zap that I was creating the other day and it used something that was from the professional pack. And I looked to see how much it was. It's going to be $30 a month
Yeah.
just for Zapier. And I'm not willing to pay that. Now,
Right.
if I get to the point where it's like, well, the benefit from setting up those automations is going to save me more than $30 a month of my time, absolutely. But I'm going to look for other options first. And
And in
yeah.
fact, I recommend the same thing to people. I use a free version of a very popular CRM that I will not name. And the free version has all of the functionality that I need. So when people say, I want to jump in and buy something, well, before you actually know what you're going to use that technology for, it's a waste of money. Go in, if they have a free version, try the free version. Does it give you all the functionality you need? Then you don't need to pay for it.
Well, and I would add on to that is that, you know, even if you don't keep with that CRM, just using it to say, I need a this because everybody says I need a CRM or a whatever tool it is. If you go and you sign up and you start paying, it might be months before you actually get to fully implementing it. And
Right.
that's a waste of money. So, I mean,
Yes.
I think for solopreneurs and micro businesses, you could end up saving $100 a month over or
Hmm.
over $1,000 a year. And when you look at that, that's significant. And I've got to think too that you're just managing your business more responsibly.
Hmm.
And
Getting expenses, the kind of same thought and energy that we give to sales, marketing, top line revenue. I think without that, you're constantly grasping at getting that top line revenue up, and you kind of just forget about the other side of the coin. And I think that can just be dangerous down the road. You find yourself investing in things that are supposed to increase revenue that may not do the job.
right, right. Thank you for that. For the audience, for our webinar today, given that they're not large enough to use the services of Schoolie Mitchell, say they've got up to 10 employees or something, and they want to involve someone else in their company. Is there a role or any recommendations that you would give? Because I'm guessing that the founder of the company or the president is the one who has all the information. But what recommendations would you give for somebody who's in that position?
I would say it's not so much based on the number of employees, because you could have an e-commerce company doing multi-million with 10 employees. I would say if it's, organizations that have revenue probably smaller than, say, a million or two,
Mhm.
it's a fractional CFO. I do a lot of networking with fractional CFOs, and they can certainly get you started. And a good fractional CFO will make you start this process. They're going to introduce a level of financial due diligence that maybe you didn't have before engaging them. So I'm a big proponent of the fractional CFO. I think organizations of almost any size can use their services to get their books straightened out and to start thinking about their business differently.
Thank you for that. And then I guess the follow-up question, I may or may not keep this. The follow-up question is, when is a company too small for a CFO?
That's a tough one too. I think it depends on, are they growing quickly? Do they need financing? Are they adding staff? I think though probably a good, you get probably over 500,000 in revenue. You ought to at least start thinking about again the fractional role of the fractional CFO.
Great. And I would think too that, as you were answering, I'm thinking, how much time is it going to take you as the business owner to actually go through the exercises and track these things and look? And if that's something that just is not at all your skill set, or you just really don't want to allocate your time towards that because you should be doing other things. And if you do meet some of that, 500,000 or more revenue, then it might be time to start a conversation with the CFO.
I
So
agree, absolutely. And I would recommend a bookkeeper to start out to get all your books in great shape. But I think then you get that fractional CFO who really brings that more strategic view of things. So yeah, I'm a big proponent of that.
and then I guess that if somebody does have a bookkeeper already, the bookkeeper could pull some of this information together.
Absolutely, absolutely. In
Okay.
fact, in some instances, they may actually be doing that already. If not, maybe that's a discussion to have with your bookkeeper to say, I would like you to kind of monitor these and let me know if you see anything out of the ordinary. Unfortunately, in larger organizations, accounting departments are so overwhelmed that sometimes these bills are getting paid and nobody's reviewing them.
Right. And that is, when you think about it, you should be prioritizing, where can you make a difference in the bottom line? And I think that shift in mindset for businesses of any size, that's really important because there's, these companies that bill, auto renew or monthly billing. They really don't care about how, if somebody's using their service or product or not. And
Right.
that's something that just burns me up. I mean, there was a product that I had that auto renewed on December 31st. I think it was Sugar Sync. And I missed that auto renewal about 4 times. And they're like, sorry. And I think at that point, I think that they had just fallen from high use, but they had this legacy list of people who were just not paying attention. And it was just money to their bottom line. And they probably didn't even have the staff, a real person to troubleshoot and say, oh, we can give you your money back since it's January 1st.
Yeah.
But yeah.
No, it's like we do in our personal life. I have friends who, when we talk about it, and they'll say they have 5 or 6 different TV services. Yeah, Hulu and Sling and Peacock and Amazon and Apple. And how much TV can you possibly be watching in one day?
Exactly. And, when you think about it on the personal front, I mean, that's a vacation, staying on top of expenses like this. Life has gotten more complicated, unfortunately, and we owe it to ourselves. Okay, so back to Schooling Mitchell's. How would I spot your ideal client?
My ideal client probably has annual revenue of 5 million and up, can be in almost any industry. Probably utilizes a fractional CFO at this point. That's why there's such great referral partners for me. And my hope would be that they would want to take a look at these expenses. Our process is such an easy lift for business owners. I'm often just baffled at why someone will say, yeah, I just don't have time for it right now. I can't take on another project. It's not. If I could go to a CEO and say, we can save you 28% on your expenses, and I'm going to maybe need an hour of your time, I don't know why they wouldn't proceed. Because again, it is a very easy lift.
So what does Robin bring to the table?
Yeah, I obviously, Schooling Mitchell, there's franchisees all across the US and Canada, but we each have our own unique approach to it. We have our own unique specialties. And I think for me, what I bring to my clients is I will have a very strong affinity for them and want them to be successful in a variety of ways. So because I network a lot, I'm able to bring them resources. I have a client right now that I brought in a referral for an insurance broker, a referral for a social media coordinator, a referral for a marketing company, because those are things that they needed. And once they realized that I was well networked, it could give them, different referrals. They would reach out to me when they needed things. They needed some IT help with some Microsoft. I was able to connect them with someone I knew in that space. So I like to bring a more holistic view. Whenever I'm talking with a prospect, in addition to what we could do with Schooling Mitchell, I'll always ask them, what else keeps you up at night? I have an entire network of companies that work similar to Schooling Mitchell that I specifically partner with that can look at things like cost segregation and taxes. They can look at payroll, employee benefits, insurance, workers' comp, audits, all kinds of areas that don't cost a business anything up front, but might save them on the back end. So I try to come with a whole suite of options and be just as big a resource as I can be for my clients.
Can you tell me, as a teaser for people who may have started with the podcast and haven't watched the webinar yet, can you just share what the webinar is about and why someone should watch it?
I think the webinar gives people some very grounded, straightforward process for starting to look at expenses and gives you the philosophy behind, why it's been an area that's been not given a lot of attention when you look at the other spaces out there to other ways to increase top line revenue. So I think it gives you here's the rationale for doing it. And it gives you a very step-by-step basic approach to how to take a look at expenses and maybe find errors or a process for how do I go out and get some additional bids to save costs. So I think it's very practical in its approach.
Thank you. We've talked about Duct Tape before, but I've used their methodology and was a consultant with their network for 12 years. And one of my favorite things to do is to audit somebody's marketing with them or share how to do it. And I think this is very similar. Instead, you're auditing expenses, but again, there's a lot of waste and there's things that you need to have. But this actually, I think from a marketing perspective, it's let's make sure that we're taking a strategic approach to marketing first and that it's marketing tactics that matter. And I love letting people off the hook for things that are just a waste of their time because I look at the budget in terms of time and money and effort, all three of those things. And somebody could be spending time on something that takes 3 hours a week. But the issue is that that's not getting them any ROI for their efforts.
Right.
And so in a way, these two are hand in hand and it's a mindset.
Absolutely. And I would take it a step further to say if you have employees, engage your employees in the process and engage them in encouraging them to bring forward areas where they think you can cut costs. In a very large companies, I've seen that, been part of groups that were successful because the people closest to the expense are the ones that really know what's going on. And so engaging your employees and, hey, we're going to review these expenses. How is this service or that service working for you? You're the one that administrates our IT or our telecom or something. How's it going? What's working well? What's not working well? Other than just renewing and letting those bills keep going, engage your staff in ways to help reduce costs as well. I've unfortunately experienced in larger companies where the staff was completely disengaged to the point where I would point out that they were actually paying two vendors for the same service and didn't get much of a reaction from some people in the accounting department. So I think engaging employees and creating this culture around wise use of spending money, I think actually resonates a lot with employees.
I would think so, because then you have, the healthier the bottom line is, the more likely that the company is not going to be engaging in any layoffs or cutting budgets for things. Remember, we'd call into customer service and, how do I do this with the tool, or can you set me up with that? One of the things that I always asked was, what advice would you have, or what's the neatest feature or something that's new with the tool? And you made me think about that when you talked about engaging with your employees and with vendors. Bring them in there because they may
Yes,
say, hey, we've got this new feature. And all of a sudden it's something that you can bundle that makes sense that, then can save you $50 a month.
absolutely. In fact, we
Now,
do that when we work with Schooley Mitchell clients. The CEO or the CFO will be the person signing the service agreement with us. And I'll immediately say, thank you. I don't need you now for probably 4 to 6 weeks. Tell me about the person who handles your shipping. And it'll usually be the shipping manager or something like that. That's who I go spend time with. I'm done with the C-suite after the service agreement is signed until we bring back the value report. The data gathering and us learning about the company and that specific expense, that all happens at the person closest to that activity.
that makes sense. That makes sense. Okay, I want to move on to a question that I ask everybody who comes on here is, what is the coolest thing that you do, or what lights you up when you work with a client?
I really enjoy beyond what we can do at Schooley Mitchell, which is honestly pretty cool. I just enjoy learning about other people's businesses and being able to help them in a way they hadn't anticipated. As I mentioned that example, being able to say, I've got great contacts in marketing. Let me give you some referrals. I have great contacts in insurance. And then seeing those contacts be able to help my client, I enjoy that as much as I enjoy how I interact with Schooley Mitchell and the client.
Thank you. Okay, now the second question that I ask everybody is there a tool or an app or a piece of technology that you can't live without?
There is actually a website called meetways.com. I'm new in Arizona. I've only been here about 6 years now, and I started my business 3 years ago, and I was meeting people across Metro Phoenix, which is a very flat, sprawling metropolitan area. And people would always, get names of places I didn't know. Hey, I'm in Cave Creek, and where are you? I'm in Chandler. Where do you want to meet? I didn't know the area. I didn't know where to have coffee. I didn't know what was halfway in between things. And unfortunately, I had a hard time kind of trying to navigate, say, with Google Maps to say, okay, well, it's 60 miles between where they are, where I am, but what's in between? Where on Meatways, it's free, so you're going to see some advertisements, but I can put in their address and my address. I can say, find me pizza shop or brewery or coffee shop. It will give me the distance between the 2 points, the halfway point, and then list for me 10 locations near that midway point that offer what I'm looking for. It was an invaluable time saver for me because I was not familiar with the location.
That is cool. I'm going to try that out. Yeah, I feel like it takes several years to get to know a new area. I'm
Oh, yeah.
relatively new in the Seattle area. So,
Especially too, like new coffee shops would pop up or something. Or it's a place you'd never been before, going in a different direction. You think about it, then it was always literally 4 to 5 emails back and forth. Where are you? I'm here. What do you want to do? Let's meet at a coffee shop. Where do you want to go? Let's find someplace in between. How about this? How about that? Complete waste of time.
yeah. Isn't it interesting? Like, I was just thinking of when you said, like, however many emails back and forth, it's kind of like scheduling too. Now we're all so used to, let me give you my link, schedule
Exactly.
something. I mean, there's just so many efficiency tools. And then that gets you into, actually, if we talked about the marketing and the expenses, then we talk about our time and the value of, say, using a tool like Zapier to create some automations or the setup so that something happens over and over again, and that the savings amounts to a significant number of hours, that whether it's yourself or somebody else.
Absolutely.
So,
I was actually a late convert to calendar and scheduling integrations.
mhm.
I thought in my head that sending someone my calendar link was cold and impersonal, and I can't get behind that. And then some friends convinced me to at least give it a try, and I gave it a try, and I can't live without it now. It literally, again, is cut down from 4 or 5 emails, if not more, to one email with a link. Now, I do think because it is a little bit more impersonal, I think it's incumbent on the sender to make sure that their email message is crafted in a very nice way, but there's no denying the efficiency of those links.
Yeah, I've got a couple things to say about that. First of all, I did work for a company, a startup, in 2021 and 2022. And when I suggested that I use a scheduling app because I'd been using one, they just were saying, no, 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 no. And this was a fintech startup. You can't do that. And it's like, well, it's like, have my girl call your girl type of thing. I don't have a girl. What am I supposed to do?
And
Um, I am the girl. And so that's one thing. Another is one of my tips that or what I do often is, if it's somebody I don't know well, or even if it is somebody I know well, I'll say, here's my calendar link, but feel free to send me yours if you'd prefer.
me too.
Um, and then also, if they're in a different time zone and, say we're working with somebody in Europe,
Yep.
if we need something outside of the times, like I can start at 7 a.m., but I don't want to make that a daily thing, but that's a perfect time, and then finally, my little tip that I created was, I had a client that, it's a financial advising firm on the East Coast, and we
Wow.
needed to meet, that day or the next day.
Yeah.
They're off doing their thing with clients. It would be that back and forth, multiple emails. And so what I ended up doing was, I went into my calendar app. I use Book Like a Boss, and I created a same day event. And I said, if you have received this link, you
Yeah.
have special powers. And I
Yeah.
said, so what I did was, I made it so they could see when I had any time free, could only
Oh,
book a couple days in advance.
wow.
And it was something that, if they did book it, they had to text me and say, I have booked for this
Yeah.
time. Is this good with you? And that way, all it did was, it got rid of that back and forth. Um,
Absolutely.
so
Awesome.
um, well, we're wrapping up. In 1 to 2 sentences today, can you share with the people listening what you hope people take away from the conversations we've had in the webinar and the podcast?
Yeah, I think I would hope that people have a mindset around their expenses and just have some awareness and really start to get some due diligence around these expenses and get a hold of them, particularly if you're growing. Your focus will be other places and these expenses will get forgotten about. So I think it's more just the mindset of saying, This is something I need to understand better and monitor on a regular basis.
Great. Thank you. And I forgot to mention that we will have a handout that you can download. It will be in the description, and you will also have contact information in case you want to have a conversation with Robin. But, our goal here with this webinar and podcast series is to provide sound, practical business advice and marketing advice that you can put into practice without having to pay anybody a fee for this. So I hope that you found this valuable, and thank you for making it to the end. And Robin, I really appreciate you taking the time and making the effort to share your expertise.
Well, thank you. Again, I appreciate the opportunity to be here. It was fun.
If you found this valuable and you're thinking to yourself, I need to create some video content for my business, but I'm not confident I could pull it off professionally enough. That's literally what we help people with at Pro Video Pages. No pressure, but if you want to see how we make this ridiculously simple for busy professionals, just check out the link in the description and reach out.